it's hard enough to have a show when people can come to it. You still feel pretty isolated, so the idea of having it virtually was unbearable. So thank you to Art League. And I also wanted to say thank you always to my parents who let me be myself. And that is a tremendous gift to have, and especially in the arts it's such a struggle, and it's lonely. So, having that support, I still get emotional when I think about that support from them. So, thanks to them. And thanks to Andy, my husband, for taking this journey with me as a fellow artist and writer. We look at life from that strange perspective of the artist, and it makes it doable. And thank you to my students. You have helped me be a better painter, and I am continuing to grow and receive from you guys. So I'm really grateful for that. It's interesting because when I started many years ago, before children, before a spouse, before being a teacher, I thought of myself as three things. So I thought of myself as a woman, an artist, and a Jew. And I would sometimes think, which one, what's the hierarchy of those? Well, I think first and foremost is that I'm a woman. Because that's the most universal. And but as I've aged, I've added things to that definition, and it's that I'm a mother and a partner and a teacher. And it's been an incredible journey. And as I say to my students, thank you. You make me a better parent. And as I say to my children, thank you. You make me a better teacher. And I bet you guys know what I mean. In this journey of painting, I feel like I continue to get closer to who I am, or to return to who I am. I have a wonderful theatrical story from a man named Robert DeRista, who taught me in undergraduate. He actually taught here at American. There was a huge riff in the 80s over here at American, and back in the day when you could be pissed off at your administration and go get another job in another city with tenure. Yeah. So he left American and went to BU, which is where I went to undergraduate, and he had buddies there, but he was a man of metaphors. He never spoke to you directly. So as a senior, I was walking out of the school, literally, with my arms full of stuff, paintings and whatever materials I had, leaving for that final moment, and DeRista walks down, and he says to me, Tanya, I expect you to throw everything you've learned here into the garbage. I was like, I know exactly what he meant. I said to him, that's going to take a very long time. And it has, and it continues. But I think that's what's so interesting, and is that you must learn and be educated and learn your craft, and be able to have the facility, and at the same time sustain your soul, which is no easy task, and it comes and goes. And I used to say that took me about 15 years to recover from my education, but I think I still am recovering. In this recent period of work, I feel like, I know my process has changed. It started pre-pandemic and was affirmed during the pandemic, which was to, I'm a social person, some of you might know that, and I really get a lot of nourishment from connections with people. And I loved, and being in the studio is lonely. And I loved having that companionship and that relationship to work off of and respond to. So for many years, I worked with people in the studio. And then pre-pandemic, I started to get worn out. I need a little break from people. I can't believe it, but it's true. And I started to think about, but I think that's what's also interesting is that you never know why it is you're ready. Was I ready because I was tired, or was it because I was at a certain place in my work that I could separate differently? I think they're really almost inseparable when I think back on the timing of things. So I started to just work from drawings. So I still needed the structure and the form to respond to. But it gave me a freedom and a independence from the subject that I always feel very loyal to, and sometimes too loyal. And so but I also loved I didn't want the work to become so separate from the individual, and the drawings really helped bridge that need of clarity, individualism, specificity, form, but it left me free to use my color completely independently. And, I've always felt that color was the essence of painting, and certainly for me, and the paintings that I tend to lean towards. I felt like I finally, in this transition of technique, could tap into something that I did as a child, which was feeling the color exclusively and letting that, and responding to it. And, for the most part, that's what I've done here. This painting here was, I would say, in the beginning of this transition, and you can kind of see that if you look. I know you guys are all over here, but if you look at that painting here, and you guys can shift. Yeah, like move around, be bold. And so in this one, I would say that's where I was, sort of headed towards. What I wanted to say about that with the change of the edges of the page is that when I first started, I really was uncomfortable with the size, and that's what students, that's why I did it. I wanted to, yes, because being uncomfortable is how you develop and how you move out. I'm not even gonna say move forward, but move. And so when I first started, a nose this size was really uncomfortable. And I really had problems with proportion and clarity. And then I had to, but that's what I wanted, because I didn't really want it to just be a nose. I wanted it to be a mountain. And as I started to go through that process, that's what things started to become, was a landscape. But I didn't want them to lose, like I said, it was extremely important for me to sustain the individual and yet open up the brush stroke and the space to make it connected to its place and I've always done that, but it's always been the place and the figure. Now I wanted my figures to be a part, like intertwined with that place, to be bigger than themselves. And then it brought me back to another period when I started the nude many years ago. I went I did a period where I was painting the nude, and I realized in reflection, and thinking about these paintings, I was doing the same thing for myself then, that I wanted us to be human beings, men and women, not in a certain position in the world, but just in the world, and that would connect us, that we can all relate to. Another thing that people are asking about are these objects. I've always painted objects throughout my life. Historically, they gave me a break from people, so I was like, yeah, they don't talk back. But they're always representing people. So in my mind, as I'm painting, I'm thinking about human relationships when I'm painting objects. And this one is peculiar. And again, why? You know, again, something starts and then I respond to it, and I'm going to backtrack for a second, but one of the things that has been reoccurring in my work is the tension between creation artificially and naturally. The tension between being a woman in history, choosing to have children, or choosing to be a painter, or choosing both. We don't have a lot of role models yet. In fact, when I decided to become a parent, I said, I'm doing it to be a role model. It's not fair. It's not fair that you should have to give that up. Or to give up anything. You know, why should I have to give up painting? I said, that's a really weird thing to say in order to be a parent, but I kind of did say that to myself. And, but these paintings are, and so that tension has always been there, and it's something that I paint in different ways. And this is there, and within that, there's also the creation of yourself as a painter and in developing your work. And my mother-in-law, before I got married, gave me an ostrich egg. I was like, ooh, weird, I like it. I mean, what was that about? Well, I took it and ran. I've been painting that egg ever since. I've broken it and I've gotten more, and you know, but I've been painting ostrich egg. But then when it broke first, I was like, this is amazing. Again, these things that happen when you respond to, I was like, yeah, eggs have to be broken if we're going to move and be born and flourish or struggle on all of the above. And I love that idea of that difficulty. And so that's what, you know, the fruit and the egg, and in this one in particular with the figure is very, I don't know, womb-like to me. It feels like the water, and just sort of like that broken egg is flying and taking you somewhere. So those are, people ask, you might not, by the way, sometimes I've noticed that people ask, oh, tell me about this painting, and I tell them, and they're like, oh, that's mundane. I'm like, excuse me. First they say they love it, then they tell me it's mundane, and I'm like, I don't know if I should ever talk about my paintings to people again, but it's worth the risk. So those are some ideas that. I had one other thing I did want to say that was important to this group of paintings is that when I did leave working with people in the studio, while painting them, you know, I was drawing, but I started with people I knew really well. You know, a lot of family, because not only did I know their structure and have memories of them visually, I had many drawings, and I had many feelings that I could work from. And And now a new friend, Granville, is in the studio with me, and I'm drawing him, and I can't wait to start my paintings. But I might never want to stop drawing him. FYI, if anyone else is ready to start being drawn, let me know. I want to open it up to questions and answers. I have one little last thing before I do that, actually, that I want to call out to my dear friend Rick Weaver, who's a colleague and artist and friend, and he wrote me a beautiful little note. Not little, he wrote me a note, big note. After seeing the show, and he just was like, Tania, thank you for continuing to grow and not get stuck and to have the courage to pursue yourself. And I thought, I said to him, you made my show. That's what I said to myself when I started this path. I said, if I can have the respect of those I respect, then I have succeeded. And I don't always feel that way. Sometimes I want some more. But when I'm being, more honest with myself, that's really the ultimate goal, and to be understood by those you regard. So, on that, I'd like to open up to questions and answers. Yes?
Could you talk a little more about solitude and social, being a painter? You said it changed at one point. Do you find if you're social for a couple hours, then you're good for the rest of the solitude? Or do you feel, are you better with being with other painters?
It's more, you mean the solitude with other painters or in my studio?
Well, whatever, how do you
I think it's larger than that. It's more just in the arc of my life. It's not like day to day that way. Because as I age, I'm less social. I don't need that as much as I used to need it. So I'm still, in our family, I'm still one of the social ones, but I'm less than I used to be. Meaning, I don't need that to be energized in the same way. So I think it's more like that. So when I'm in the studio, they can come with me in my mind, and they don't have to be there in body. Does that make a little more sense? So it's a larger issue of aging, I would think.
I love how you're going from, say, the naked pictures that were separate bodies floating in space a lot of the time, to becoming a part of the whole ground, the landscape. They're sort of melding in and out. I mean, even this one doesn't have the attachment to becoming clouds or mountains or whatever. They're very physical in a landscape.
They feel like the
kind of way.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's beautiful, Pamela.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that, in that series of paintings, someone who I didn't know came up to me at a show and started talking to me about them. I was like, oh my God, can you write that down? Brilliant. And I wish I could remember it fully, but he was talking about them being suspended. They weren't like in heaven or hell. They were in this transitional place. And I think that's something that you're talking, and I think that does reflect my own personal development, that I feel more there than suspended.
Well, and even with these pieces, they still have that sort of suspension of objects, but there's more of a narrative to it that's connected by the whole canvas, by all the imagery, color, and depth.
That's a great observation. Thank you. It's good to have other artists here.
You said that you paint objects, or you like painting objects, gives you a break from people, and the objects don't talk back.
Right. But now I'm not working with people either.
Well, it made me curious what talking back is like when it's a self-portrait experience.
Oh my God. Woo! You can imagine. Well, ask Alexa, she knows. I can have lots of conversations on my own. I have friends who love dogs, and one friend said, well, I love my dog because I can talk to him all the time. He just listens. I was like, I don't need a dog for that. That's what I love about painting, is that it is my conversation. Like when I say I'm listening, it is my well-being, because we talk. It's we, all of me and all my parts and all my ghosts and all my needs and desires is that conversation with painting. And that's what I love about painting for my well-being, is that I can have that clarity and that confrontation and then resolve it and go and move on. It makes me a better person, honestly. Andy wouldn't be married to me without my painting. It's like, oh no, you can't stop painting. Oh. He likes my friends and family too.
I know how much you enjoy color, because that's what you teach. But on most of these, you've chosen to kind of crush the dynamic range, and that limits, I would think, some of your choices and your colors. What's going on that you've made these low-key and it's a choice that you have.
It is and it isn't. I have a few things to respond to that. One is, during those paintings Pamela was talking about, those sort of nudes that were suspended or floating, my dad came and was like, Tanya, why are they so dark? I said, maybe I'm dark. Hello? It's how I feel. When you restrict the palette, you intensify what it is. When you add everything, it sort of dulls it down, actually. It loses its power. And sorry, Jenny Saville, Jenny Saville, the British painter who was in Italy, poor thing. It's funny, but I was talking to another friend from graduate school recently about her recent work, and her color is like glaring. There's glaring brightness, as well as duller colors in her. And I don't respond. I don't feel them. They feel very forced. So take a look at her recent stuff that has just come out. She's actually doing large heads, and I look at her work. Her color doesn't feel true. It doesn't feel true to me. So, but there's also an exaggeration that just leaves me at a distance and disengaged. Does that answer why I do this? That's not why I said, that's not working for her, so I'm not going to do it. It's authentic, but I do think in analyzing it, that I do think having a tighter range allows things to soar. I do that. I've always painted that way. Like I just rather mix the color than squeeze it out of the tube. But on the other hand, a lot of my students know that I give I do a lot of limited palette, exercises, and my students will then minimize that. But I'm using pure color, like in these paintings. It's not, and even if it's a restricted palette, I'll use the pure color and then do all the mixes. So I have as large a range as I can possibly have with a tight palette.
What painters inspire you, both master painters and contemporary? Or do you have any that you're
yeah.
And Jenny Saville reminds me of Freud. What's his name?
Yeah, Lucian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in love with Lucian Freud. Not anymore. But he's dead now, so I don't know if you consider him current. But when his show first came to Washington in the 80s, I don't remember how old I mean, I was in college in the 80s, but I don't remember what moment, but I went to see at the Hirshhorn the first time Lucian Freud's work was seen in America. I wanted to drop to my knees and kiss the ground. And I did. As everyone else flocked away. Ew, this is disgusting! I was like, bye-bye. More room to look at Lucian Freud. And he's one of the painters I actually use as an example of like growing. I mean, that man grew in his artwork in his lifetime. He took two really big changes in his artistic push. And I have great respect for that, and I realize how much courage that takes to break your boundaries and do other, to take and be true to yourself, but do something aesthetically beyond what you've done. When I was an undergraduate, I was completely in love with Manet. Tight palette. Loved his work. I studied it very thoroughly. I'm just, I love a lot of painters, but these are some of the ones that are really dear to me. So then I went to Spain after graduate school, and yeah, Manet, of course you love Velázquez and Goya. Yes! And I was just like, sorry, Manet, I can't even look at you again. For a little while. I went back to Manet. But at that time, I was like, oh my gosh. 2 years, Andy and I lived in Madrid, and we were at that museum all the time. And it is my favorite museum in the world. Why? Because it has the deepest, but it's the deepest collection of great painters, of extraordinary painters. So between Velázquez and Goya, I mean, they would pop things up from the basement, 30 Goyas, here they are. I don't even think they know what they have in their basement. It's just like they're just, wow. And then they have an amazing amount of Titians, which I later fell in love with Titian in graduate school. Well, I was introduced to him in graduate school, really, by my teachers. And, but they have a lot of his collection too. And so, again, Freud is huge for a current painter, relatively current. Avi Doraricha, who's also died not that long ago. A little older than Freud, but in that generation, who I've cherished. Any other questions? Yeah.
I have a question of process.
Sure. Of course, any questions?
Oh, okay. So you said you jumped into the, not just, but you started doing larger. Did you have smaller Did you have smaller ones that you then said, let me translate onto this large
Like I do when I teach you?
onto this large canvas? Or did you just put the large canvas up there and organically kind of start?
Well, you have to remember I've been eating for decades, so I don't always have to do what I ask you to do. And by the way, you can do one at home in the privacy of your house. But, no, I didn't do small things.
And then put them on there. You start off with that.
Well, I start with my drawing, and I have a collection of empty canvases, and I think about, but I don't prepare the way like Rick Weaver does. It's not my personality. I mean, so no. And everyone has their method, but I don't have, that's not my method. I'll change my painting. I'm not afraid to change what I have.
Tania, did you, with each of the paintings, did you find yourself starting with maybe converging colours, or with an eye, or a nose? And did you find that there were any patterns, or was every single canvas different in terms of the starting point?
If I can't answer you absolutely for sure, because I can't, again, back to Michelle's question, I'm not that formulaic. But if I had to take a guess, if I was looking on at myself from the outside, I would say I work with intersections, like, and in-between spaces are very important to me. If there isn't an in-between space, like in this thing over here, it's all head that just goes off the page, then I'm looking at in-between spaces in the flesh. You know, like between, maybe like in that area of the eye socket in relationship to the bridge of the nose, because it has such a valley and hill. But I try not to be a hypocrite. And when I teach, I do go back to my studio and say, Tania, listen to yourself. Anybody else?
Did you do all of these during the COVID isolation?
Yeah, are we done with COVID?
And did that inform some of what you were doing as well? I mean, did it impact what you were doing?
Did COVID impact what I was doing? Yeah. I seem to just live. Well,
It was more
of
just.
course it impacts. Life impacts me. Like it impacts you, right? So everything that is happening around you is extremely impactful. Now, ironically, like I said, I started this series of work before COVID in not having the same physical engagement with people. And then the pandemic sort of affirmed that. Okay, you are alone.
But you brought all these people into your life at that time. Did you have them as subject matter?
The
Did they sit for you?
paintings?
All these people that you were painting?
They've been in my life for a long time.
Yeah. But did, for example, you have the three figures here. Did they sit for you?
No.
You just did it from memory or from old photographs and from your time with them?
Well, like I said, I'm working from drawings, and occasionally I'll pull out a photograph. If I do pull out a photograph, I draw from the photograph until I get far enough away from them. I don't recommend that to my students. Danger. Because you have to be experienced enough not to start copying a photograph. And that's why I'm seduced by it too, and that's why I make sure I do enough drawings that take me away from the photograph and make it into an image I made. And then from that, I'll go to the painting. So no one sat for me for these paintings, no. Well, the other interesting thing that did happen with this was I started to paint for my paintings. So I have something like that one over there too. I had done a big 48 by 48 square head, and I zoomed in to a section of the head and made another painting. No one recognizes who that is except the person who it is of. I love that. He came in and he goes, "Is that me, Mama?" There's my eyes. I said, "You bet, kid." I look at them, and I go back to the painting. You guys do that too, right? So I look at them, and then I go, and then I have several things, and then I have a professional photographer who comes and takes, and I paint big buckos. And then I go, oh my God, that's all finished. Yeah, it cost me to finish my paintings, right? So, but then you realize you just get a different distance, and then I go back to them. So it's a sort of a complicated answer. And I actually have one painting right now that I started pre-pandemic for this one that I will be going back to. And it was interesting because when I was younger and thought I was absolutely right, how could they possibly go back to his paintings after all this? Couldn't he just let it go and make a new painting? Well, here I am. No, I can't let it go. I'm going back to that painting and I'm going to change it.
What's the line? Art's never finished, it's abandoned?
Yeah, something like that. You just decide it's time. But there's a better judgment and a worse judgment. The better judgments are, there's a resolution in the painting. Like that one that I'm going back to, it is not resolved. So, and one of the things I've been talking to some of my students about recently is, don't make things precious. And you might have a beautiful moment in your painting, but you don't have a beautiful painting. And so you need to lose it, let it go, and see if you can make a better painting as a whole. And to be kind to yourself, I say to myself, I did that. I made that beautiful moment. I didn't make a beautiful painting. And it's mine, and it's in me. And maybe it'll come out again. Maybe in a few paintings from now, I'll see that moment again. Maybe not. But you have to have the courage to lose it. But you have to also know when a painting is resolved and to move on versus it's worth breaking it open and going back there. And you don't always make the right decision, clearly. Anything else, guys?
Yes. Is this one of the later in the series?
I'm going to say that's the middle, too. I honestly, I hope there's no, like, historical fact-check. I mean, I'm guessing, and like I just said, I go back and forth. That one I did not. But thank you, Cheryl, because it does make me realize I made 2 different paintings of the same subject. And I have the drawing here. Does anyone want to see the drawing?
Yeah, sure.
So, what I was just realizing is that, so I made another painting, a square painting from the drawing of this. I wasn't sure what the painting needed. Not this one, but the one I did previously to that. And I sent it to my girlfriend, Julie Guerin, my one friend from graduate school. Thank goodness. I said, Julie, what do I need? She goes, stop. Sound familiar? I need that too. I said, really? She goes, yep, make another one. Here's the drawing. But I had another painting. And I did that with, again, like that one I said I took from another painting. Well, it's not the same composition, but I took a section of it. The one that you asked about with that 3/4 head, I had another one, and I did it again. And it was interesting because I don't know. So I started to work things out on separate canvases as well, not just overworking one canvas, which was helpful. So, yes.
So, when you were doing the ones that this series, did you always complete one work before starting another? Did you ever have any in tandem going on? Or is it
I always have things in tandem going on. I think depending on my mood, like some days I just don't have it, to work on my gigantic painting. Some days I just need a small painting. Some days I am ready to start something new because I have that energy, and some days I need to work on something unresolved that I don't like. So I have a lot of things going on, and depending on what suits the day, or morning versus afternoon. So like, I could start off in the morning being pissed off, angry, but if and at the end of the day, this isn't every day, but it depends how angry I am in the morning. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I like those people. I just sort of am more lighthearted, and I let it out, I let it go, and I make it into something. And then another thing I love to say to my students, I was like, you know what I say when I have a bad day in the studio? I say, so glad I have tomorrow. I didn't get it today. I have tomorrow. A lot of my students get so down on themselves. I'm like, why? There's tomorrow. Of course you didn't get it. Who gets it today?
So were any of these, is there any one or two that were particularly difficult, meaning you started and you're just like, I don't know where this is going and I got nothing?
I would say that head over there. I worked a lot on that head. In fact, Annika, who's taking, I sent a group of photographs, this is an example, I sent a group of photographs from a professional photographer, and she didn't put that in, you know how the art link has that link to my images from the show. She didn't put that because it doesn't look like the one up on the wall. I was like, yeah, because I had to change it.
How much time might they take you?
A lifetime. It's the oldest story in the book. You know, there's an old, I'll change the story a little bit, but there's an old woman painter in the field. Guess which part I changed? And young person comes up to her and says, wow, that's amazing. How long did it take you? And she says, to this moment. Well, guys, you've been great. Thank you for your support from all different parts of my life. It's great to have you here. You're welcome in my studio.